Stan Deaton with the Georgia Historical Society. Macon usually gets top billing when it comes to Georgia's musical heritage, but Columbus has a trump card, Ma Rainey, the mother of the blues, who was honored on this day in 1994 by the U.S. Postal Service. Ma Rainey was born in 1886 in Columbus, where she first started performing in vaudeville and minstrel shows. That's where she met her husband, Will Pa Rainey, and together they toured the South. During the 1920s, she recorded over 100 records in 5 years with such jazz legends as Louis Armstrong and Coleman Hawkins. It was her style, wild hair, gold teeth and chains, and deep raspy voice that electrified audiences. It also influenced her young protege, Bessie Smith, who performed with her for a short time. When the Great Depression stalled Rainey's career, she returned to Georgia, where she died in 1939 at age 53. But her music continued to influence jazz singers for generations. The stamp bearing her likeness honored a true musical icon when it debuted on September 17, 1994. Today in Georgia History.
Today in Georgia History is made possible by the generous support from the Robert W. Woodruff Foundation and is a joint production of the Georgia Historical Society and Georgia Public Broadcasting. For more on this topic, go to todayingeorgiahistory.org.
I'm Stan Deaton with the Georgia Historical Society. Long before Bloody Sunday in Selma, Georgia had a much bloodier civil rights event, the Camila Massacre. On this day in 1868, during Reconstruction, a political rally in Mitchell County resulted in about a dozen freedmen being killed and 30 others wounded. Georgia had just been readmitted to the Union, but blacks and whites remained deeply divided. In early September, white Democrats in the Georgia legislature expelled all 28 African American members. In response, one of those, Philip Joyner from southwest Georgia, led several hundred freedmen on a march from Albany to Camilla for a Republican rally. As the marchers entered the courthouse square, the sheriff and other local whites opened fire. The violence sent a clear message. Many black voters stayed home for the presidential election 2 months later. But the Camila Massacre made national headlines and prompted Congress to return Georgia to military occupation. Finally, in 1998, 130 years later, the massacre was officially acknowledged when Camila publicly commemorated the victims of the bloody events of September 19, 1868, today in Georgia history.
Today in Georgia History is made possible by the generous support from the Robert W. Woodruff Foundation and is a joint production of the Georgia Historical Society and Georgia Public Broadcasting. For more on this topic, go to todayingeorgiahistory.org.
I'm Stan Deaton with the Georgia Historical Society. A Ramblin' Wreck is more than just a snappy nickname for Georgia Tech. It speaks to the very reason the school was created in the first place, to help bring the Industrial Revolution to Georgia. The Georgia School of Technology began with $65,000 in state funding and 84 students. At first, the school was narrowly focused, teaching only mechanical engineering. But by the turn of the century, students also studied chemical, civil, and electrical engineering. Philanthropist Andrew Carnegie donated $20,000 to build the first library, and the legendary John Heisman became the first full-time football coach in 1903. When tech grads designed makeshift vehicles for projects in South American jungles, these contraptions and their builders became known as Ramblin' Wrecks from Georgia Tech. The school became Georgia Institute of Technology in 1948 to reflect the greater emphasis on science and advanced technology. Women began attending in 1951, and 10 years later, Tech became the first major state university in the Deep South to admit African American students without a court order. One of the nation's top research universities was created on October 13, 1885, today in Georgia history.
Today in Georgia History is made possible by the generous support from the Robert W. Woodruff Foundation and is a joint production of the Georgia Historical Society and Georgia Public Broadcasting. For more on this topic, go to todayingeorgiahistory.org.
I'm Stan Deaton with the Georgia Historical Society. He was the leader of the band that helped spark the Southern rock movement of the 1970s. Duane Allman was born in 1946 in Nashville, and his family moved to Florida when he was 11. Duane started playing guitar, and he and his brother Greg formed a band called the Allman Joys. It would be the foundation of a uniquely Southern sound that blended blues, jazz, country, and rock. In 1968, Duane became a popular session guitarist in Muscle Shoals, Alabama, working with Wilson Pickett, Aretha Franklin, and others. A year later, he formed the Allman Brothers Band and moved to Macon, where his manager had formed Capricorn Records. Their second album, At Fillmore East, was hailed by critics as the best live rock album ever. Duane also played guitar on Eric Clapton's seminal Layla album, and his unique style of lead and bottleneck slide guitar influenced a generation of musicians. Duane Allman was hitting his stride and was only 24 years old when he was killed in a motorcycle accident in Macon on October 29, 1971, today in Georgia history.
Today in Georgia History is made possible by the generous support from the Robert W. Woodruff Foundation and as a joint production of the Georgia Historical Society and Georgia Public Broadcasting. For more on this topic, go to todayingeorgiahistory.org.